This is GitHub as the source of truth for scripts in Jamf Pro, and we have two of the senior engineers from Target here, Brad and Brian, to walk us through their content. So let's give them a round of applause.
Happy JNUC, everybody. Who's ready for a live demo? Too bad, sorry. We recorded it. We weren't going to attempt it. I'm Brad Schmidt. I'm at Target. I'm a senior engineer. My main focus is our specialty equipment for our product designers. So I get to play with some pretty cool stuff like 3D printers and some interesting high-end printers and some cool software. But enough of that. You might remember me from Hopkins Public Schools. I was there for a few years. And you may also know me from St. Paul Public Schools, where we rolled out just a few iPads. Very passionate about automation. And this is a great example here of using GitHub to really automate our workflows. So with that, Brian?
Thanks, Brad. My name is Brian Lasham. I work at Target. I've been a senior engineer there for about 3 years. I manage the Jamf Pro infrastructure there. I'm also on the steering committee for the Twin Cities Mac admins group with Brad and John Wetter, and Bill Smith, the rubber chicken from the card pack, is also on that steering committee. One of the other side gigs that I do at Target is also handle the Target Lights system on the top of Target Plaza. So if you're downtown and you see that giant display up on the Target Plaza building, that's part of my gig too. But today we're here to talk about GitHub and how it can be a source of truth. So let's talk about our agenda today. What are we trying to solve for? An overview of CICD and version control, the project that we're actually using called GetToJSS, and then step-by-step implementation. So what are we trying to solve for? Managing code in a web application is kind of difficult. Now my presenter notes are showing up. So the problem we have is that in the JSS as we have it now, there is no version control, there is no change control, and there's no change approval. So we don't have a peer review process in the JSS as it exists. Collaboration and review are manual steps. So the process here is step one, we're actually going to fork the repo in this process. Step two, we're going to make changes to that repo of our code. That is all our scripts and EAs for the JSS. Step three, we're submitting that pull request back to the main review or the main repo. So here's where our change control process is going to come into place, where a peer of ours will actually have to do a peer review to actually approve that pull request. So nobody can submit a code change into our JSS without that approval step. Once that is merged, it will actually call out to Jenkins via GitHub Webhook, and it will trigger a build in Jenkins. And then Jenkins clones the repo, determines the changed resources, and then submits them via an API call to the Jamf Pro REST API to upload the changed scripts. So why we want version control is simple. You need a mechanism to test changes in your environment before they end up in prod. And in this presentation, we're assuming a level of comfort with version control, but I want to talk about a little bit about the basics of using Git itself. Keep in mind, you don't need to use GitHub. You can use GitLab or whatever preferred vendor you have there. But I'll talk a little bit about the basics of command line Git, because that's what we are using in this implementation. So if you made a GitHub repo and you cloned down that GitHub repo, these are the steps you would go to start committing code from the terminal. So you start with creating your new repo on github.com. You git clone that repo. You git add, and here I'm using a period as a shortcut. That's simply going to just add all the files in that directory to my repo to start tracking them. After we've added all those files, you have to put a nice commit message in here. Nice beard for Brad. And then we'll git push. Git push will add that back to the repo and then commit it up to github.com.
Is everybody familiar with how to get Git on your machine? Show of hands. Okay. If you're not familiar, get the Xcode tools and you'll get Git.
Yeah, the developer tools do include Git. There's other ways to do it, git.org or Homebrew would also do it. All right, so the other piece of this kind of toolkit is a CICD. So we use Jenkins for our CI tool at Target. It's proven to be useful for very many tasks. We use it to run scripts for syncing distribution points. We use it for auto PKG jobs to populate those package runs. And one of the great things about Jenkins is that you can actually chain together different jobs. So for auto PKG, for example, when we run a auto package job, we can actually kick off a distribution point sync after that job, and then also kick off something like a Jira ticket to say, hey, team that owns that application, go test that. So there are many different kinds of CI/CD tools. We use Jenkins, but there's Travis CI, Bamboo, GitLab CI, and it's really the tool that glues everything together.
So it's great. We've got all of our scripts in a repo out on GitHub or maybe GitLab, or just local on our machine. We've got version control. We've got Jenkins helping us out with the CICD pipeline. But now we need to actually give Jenkins some tools, because Jenkins is just, hey, I'm going to do something when someone tells me to do something, but you've got to give me some input on what that is. So GetToJSS is a project by Adam Furby that he had posted out graciously on GitHub. And early on when I started with Target, there was a story out on our Scrum board, and it said, hey, check out this project. So I thought, hey, that sounds like a good thing to check out. And evaluated it for the team, still new to the team of 7 engineers. And I thought, I think this is going to be a viable solution, but we need to tack some things onto it. We need to be able to download our umpteen hundred scripts that are in the JSS and bring them into that repo. We need to be able to verify that, quoting and escaped characters are surviving this transport, from our JSS and back up to our JSS from our Git repo. So I added some functionality to download and verify, and also kind of refactored how the folder structure was. So it was a little more human readable. So these scripts all live in a folder with their XML that has the details about them, when they might run, date and time, things like that. So what we have with this team of engineers, very highly skilled engineers, but this GitHub project allows us the opportunity to take a step back and allow for code review and allow for that collaboration, which I've seen the team do an awesome job of taking a step back for a moment and thinking through, okay, is this the best way to do it? Or hey, I've got a little thing here, what do you think about that? And we've had, 220 pull requests merged, and this is how we edit our scripts at Target. We don't go to the JSS and click edit on a script anymore. And this has been in production since May, thanks to this tool. So we've got some prerequisites to get this up and running. We need access to GitHub or GitLab or something that allows us to trigger a job out on Jenkins. We need to have some kind of continuous pipeline tool, such as Jenkins, and we need to have a node running Python 3. The GetToJSS project requires Python 3 because it's using an asynchronous library that's able to send multiple scripts at a time up to the JSS, meaning you can get hundreds of scripts into your JSS in as little as 30 to 60 seconds. And then with GitHub, you could probably get by with a public repo if you're good with your scripts living out in the wild, but if you're not, then you may want to get a private account or use like GitHub Enterprise or GitLab.
So to set up the GetToJSS project to run locally, I'm going to walk through a few of the steps, which is helpful for bringing your existing scripts under version control, so how you get what's in there already so you can get started with this project. We're going to be using virtualenv to create this. So virtualenv is built into Python 3 and is extremely useful. It can be initially intimidating to kind of understand virtualenv, but it's really just a way to trick the Python path to load modules from a certain area. That's really what virtualenv is doing. So when a venv is activated, it's actually calling pip from a specific directory and loading those modules for Python into that virtual space. Packages get installed into that folder, so cross-project dependencies can be easily maintained. You can also use a command called pip freeze to output a text file, allowing you to easily replicate that project elsewhere and put that freeze into version control as well. So here we're git cloning the repo. We're going to make a directory to create that virtualenv directory. And we are going to run Python. Note we're running Python 3.6 here. Most default systems, including the Mac and Red Hat and other environments you'll run on, the default is not Python 3. So usually the way they get around this is you'll install another version of Python to get around that, because Python 2, legacy Python, is still used in a lot of system processes, especially in Linux. And on the Mac, we can't control what Apple gives us. So we are calling Python 3.6. We're activating that virtual environment. Then we're going to source that virtual environment, which it's just like a bash resource file. You're going to source that, and it's going to load in those variables. We are going to pip install the requirements. So this is kind of where that pip freeze command comes in. It just gives you a text configuration of what you want to install in that environment. And then we're going to run the magic here, so Python download, and then we're passing in some arguments here. So Python download, the download py script is really what Brad was talking about earlier on how we're going to pull back all the scripts and EAs into that nice folder structure that he talked about to then put it into version control for future control. And then Python sync. Python sync would be what it's called once it gets updated. So then once we make our changes, we do our commit process and stuff, Python sync is how we're actually getting that back up there. So we'll talk about setting up a GitHub repository and making it private. We'll talk about setting up a webhook and adding a webhook and authenticating. We're going to do a payload URL. It's a little.
Shoot it that way.
Huh?
There we go.
What's that?
Oh, was the clicker dead?
Yeah. So here we're doing a GitHub webhook. So we're going to create a private or a payload URL and a content type. And we're going to, sorry, I can't see the screenshot. And we're going to create the push token for the webhook. And we're going to set up our CICD pipeline for GetToJSS. We are going to remove origin here. This is typically what you do if you're going to bring this into your own internal structure for version control. So if you clone this off of github.com and you're going to put this under like your own private GitHub Enterprise or GitLab, you're going to want to remove that origin because you don't actually want to commit changes with your own scripts back out to the public public repo. So we're going to remote add origin, add in our own GitHub origin, and then we're going to git add our extension attributes and scripts. This is what was created with that download script earlier. And then we're going to just add a commit, and then we're going to push that up. And at this point now we have a repo of controlled scripts that matches the JSS.
Yeah, so at this point, we've got that GitHub repo all set. If you don't want to go the extra mile and do the Jenkins piece and get that continuous delivery and the peer review all set, you can stop right here. You're going to gain a lot of benefits from having a single repo where you've got version control yourself, and you've got the ability to actually search through all of your scripts at once. You've got them all in a text file. They're very easy to edit if you have a multiple file editor like BB Edit or Visual Studio Code, or you can use some bash foo, like Noah here, and use some sed and awk and all that good stuff. So there's really a lot of benefits to doing this, even if you're a one-person shop. And this is really where this is at. And this is step-by-step, and we'll give you the slides at the end of JNUC, I think, when they post them. But if we want to go to the next step and integrate this into a pipeline, we've got to set up a Jenkins job for this. And Jenkins has an SCM source code management module that allows us to point to a GitHub repo and provide some credentials that we created earlier. That's the personal access token piece, which is a feature of GitHub. It allows us to clone down that repo. That job is going to look at the scripts that are in there that have been changed in the last commit in the log, and it will only selectively sync those back to your JSS. So what's being changed is what's being modified. Instead of originally it was kind of everything was going, and it just didn't feel like sending 1,500 scripts up was a great idea. Let's hit the next one here. And here's where you'd enter your credentials for GitHub in the Jenkins job. And then we've got a build step. Jenkins has this concept of builds. You might, at least for myself, when I first looked at it, I thought, build, I'm not building software today. But it's really just a series of steps. And it's an instance of those steps when they were run at a specific point in time. And this is what we're running here. We're calling Python. We're telling it to create that virtual environment, just like we did on our local machine. We're bringing down those requirements, and then we're running the sync.py script to send our scripts up. And that's the magic there. The next piece, and I don't have a screenshot here, but downstream we've actually got a Slack notification, and we've got some pieces in the sync.py that you can pick up later for a Slack notification. So you can actually see what was changed when that build was triggered. Then the ultimate goal here for teams of more than one is to get this master branch protected. That way you need code review and an approval in order for those scripts to actually make it to the JSS. I think for our team, it hasn't been a barrier or a frustration. We're always able to get a pull request very quickly and get that code reviewed, so it hasn't been a hindrance to anyone. And we made a short video here of a day in the life of 2 engineers at Target. Brian's going to start out here writing some sweet Python. And he's going to commit that. First he adds it. And he's going to send those changes up to our local GitHub Enterprise account. And this takes a moment as it's calculating the differentials. Here we are out on GitHub Enterprise, and Brian's going to create a new pull request. And he creates the pull request. Oh, merge's blocked. A review is required. Well, look, there's a pull request out there. And this is me now clicking on the pull request, adding my review. Left hand types faster than the right hand. So when I had approved it, now I can merge it. GitHub makes you ensure you really wanted to do that. You can see our GitHub notification there. Oh, that went way too fast. So this is a picture of the script in Jamf Pro. Now it's been modified. I don't know if I dare try to back this up, but you can see this later when the slides become generally available. But the bottom line, that is kind of like how our workflow works throughout the day. There's usually more pictures of cats in our Slack channel, though.
One of the things that I think we failed to mention too is one thing that's super nice about this is like people ask us what are use cases, why would you want something like this? And once you have all your code that's in your JSS in a repo, now that's essentially a folder of text files, right? So if there's something in your environment like a key change for a token or a password change, some of as much as we try, we still have scripts that might have basic auth credentials on them for something like a local admin account. As soon as something like that needs to rotate, you're able to actually search that folder of stuff and quickly come up with a list of things where you can change them. You could probably try to accomplish that on your own with the Jamf Pro GUI or another way, but it's super simple to do it with an actual folder of actual files of the scripts. So in terms of use cases where this would be a problem, well, like what are you trying to protect against? Well, if you've ever had rogue EAs or something in an EA extension attribute malfunction, and you're trying to fix something, you know that one small change to an EA can change scope for a smart group, and then that can cascade, and then policies can get pushed down to people that weren't supposed to get them. So this workflow is really designed to prevent that, to make sure that two people or you have a process to review that code before it hits production.
Yeah, so whether you're one-person shop or multiple engineers, hopefully you can see some value in this. I don't know that we mentioned, but GetToJSS is an open source project out on GitHub, and we'll have a link here for you in a moment for that, or feel free to search it. There is another GetToJSS project out there that is not by Adam Furby. Feel free to check that one out, but this one, when I evaluated it, turned out to be a better option for Target, and I felt like putting my development efforts on that. Love to hear your feedback on this tool as we try to continue to contribute back to the open source community.
Yeah, we've talked about maybe extending this for things like profiles or policies as well. Since objects are just XML in the JSS, it's possible, right? We just have to put some engineering effort towards it. We have some links here. Brad mentioned the GetToJSS link. We've got Brad's GitHub. A couple of the ones down the list are things I put in. If you are new to Git and you haven't used command line Git, the Atlassian tutorial is excellent. It's a really great way to get into the basics of Git. And there's always scary parts of new technologies, like if you've ever heard of a merge conflict in Git, most of the time I just tell people, Google that, because Google or Stack Overflow is going to tell you the answer 99% of the time when you're in that situation. The other link I've got in here is setting up a Jenkins Build server in AWS. We're fortunate that our enterprise has that already set up for us, but if we were in a place where we didn't have that, how would we get that? A lot of companies are using AWS and cloud resources now, so that's a great tutorial on how to set up a Jenkins server for your environment if you don't already have something like that in there.
And how much does Jenkins cost?
It's a great call. It's open source. Unless you buy there's a company called CloudBees. They do sell like a supported, I don't know if it's called Enterprise, but they do sell a version of it. But yeah, it's open source. Mm-hmm. So.
And they've got Docker containers you can pull down and play with and beat it up for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, mm-hmm. Jenkins used to be called Hudson back in the day. Ooh. And then some conflict of interest with the people maintaining that code where they split the code, and then Jenkins got named after Leroy Jenkins, which is of World of Warcraft meme fame, so.
Well, that's what I felt like the first time I actually pushed all our scripts up was Leroy Jenkins. But seriously, no, I felt very confident that everything was going to go great. One of the things that I did mention was I wrote, and you can use it yourself, it's in the repo, but my theory was escaping characters and stuff can be hard, right? Python does a nice job though with Unicode and sending that all up, but we've got to make sure that we're not screwing up, throwing ampersands into an XML upload, things like that. So one of the things that I wanted to make sure that was, this was rock solid was, of course, testing this in our dev environment with our production data, but that's not in the live environment, to just see how things interact. Make sure when they upload that, curly brackets are still curly and square brackets are still quite square. And so I wrote a quick tool that can download a subset of inventory data and take a peek at extension attribute values. So I figured I'll start with modifying our extension attribute scripts that are collecting inventory, usually not acting on a machine, and then compare that over time to make sure that integers remain integers and dates remain dates, and I don't end up with some weird values in the extension attributes. And so I was able to methodically kind of collect that and make sure to validate that I wasn't going to trash this JSS on this new job I started.
He did try it in dev first, so in his defense.
So I don't know, Brian, what do you think? Are we done? Anything else you want to say?
The only other thing we've got on this slide is if anybody is local, Brad and I are help run the Twin Cities Mac admin, so we do try to run meetups and unmeetups, which are basically just excuses to go to a brewery and drink beer. So if you are in the area, please come to one of those. If you are already coming to those, thank you. We usually get Jamf and other people to run like one a year. Target does host usually one a year, so. Should we open up for questions?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks
Thank
for
you,
listening.
guys.
While we've got people coming up for questions, we got the microphones here. I just wanted to mention, so I've got a computer science degree, not many people know that. And the facts of just Googling it to find the answer is how I got a college degree. So that's not a joke. You can actually just do that and figure it out.
Can we Google that to verify that?
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's representatives from my alma mater here who can verify for me if you need to.
Could I get my master's with Stack Overflow?
I think so, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
good enough.
You can actually get one in Stack Overflow as well.
You mentioned profiles were something that you were thinking about adding in the future. Could you tell me where things are right now? Is it just scripts or is it extension attributes too?
It's scripts and extension attribute scripts.
Okay.
So it'll only impact the subset of your extension attributes that have scripts. It won't try to download anything that has a text input or PowerShell maybe input, but it's going to only focus on those scripts. And it will detect too, if it's a Python script or a Bash script or for some reason a PHP script.
No.
There was a PHP script in there.
Pull request denied.
No, rightfully so.
Thank you.
Sorry to any PHP fans out there. It's a powerful tool.
Got a question over on this side here.
Hi, thanks. I wonder if you can help me confirm, there's no reason why you couldn't use it with multiple unrelated Jamf environments? Is that it's just a question of cloning scripts for one environment into a local folder and then configuring GetToJSS to talk to that specific URL? Is that your thinking too? Or?
Yeah, so if you might have noticed the command line kind of architecture of the command there, you can specify what Jamf Pro server you want to go to. Recently there was a change in the release notes of Jamf Pro 10.7 or 10.8, and one of the things was that they were changing a category endpoint, so we were kind of concerned that maybe there'd be an issue. So I was able to take our production scripts and everything, clone that repo down, and then just run that sync command up against our dev server to make sure that the scripts came up with the category as expected. Was able to delete out scripts, and they repopulated as expected. So absolutely, if you want to be able to migrate from prod to dev, very, very extensible.
Cool, thanks.
You bet.
Hey, yeah, this is super cool, thank you. Are you actually restricting people from uploading scripts inside the Jamf UI?
That is something that we talked about doing and absolutely want to do, and for some reason we just haven't gone in and hit the edit button to do that. I think mainly because we're all Jamf admins, so we would have to remove ourselves as Jamf admins, create a custom thing, and if something gets added, but we want to do that. I mean, effectively that's where we're at. We do have a Jamf notifier script that's running that kind of checks for any changes and adds and deletes. So we do have a sanity check there, just in case something like auto PKG adds something, we kind of get visibility to that.
There's no reason why we couldn't. We actually talked about doing that before our presentation because we figured somebody would ask us. But that being said, I don't think anybody has gone in to manually edit it because doing it in a code editor and using a Git push or a pull request is so much nicer than waiting for the GUI.
Yeah, cool. Also, is there any magic to protect your Jamf API key instead of pasting it into Jenkins?
Well, so in Jenkins, and maybe Brian, you'd be better answering this, but
Yeah, you can set up credentials in Jenkins. To answer your question, like you're worried about having it in Jenkins? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I just saw on the screenshot, like, pasted in plain text in the job.
Yeah. So it does get stored, not in plain text on the actual Jenkins server. We are looking at using stuff like HashiVault or HashiCorp's Vault for things like key. But yeah, we haven't had a problem with the storage of keys in Jenkins, but.
Cool, thank you.
And Jenkins has the ability to set environmental variables, so you could do it through that mechanism as well. It just depends on how far do you want to obfuscate it, because at the end of the day, you're probably going to be able to extract it if you've got that high level access to your build server.
Hey, is there any reason why you can't use an existing Git repository that you've already got stuff in to do this and just point it at like a subfolder, or do you need like a complete Git repository just for this project?
So I missed the first part of your...
Sorry. Do you need like a separate Git repository completely just for this thing, or could you like put it in another Git repository that you already are storing other things like this?
Sure. So one of the things that you'll need to do is get it into a format that the script is expecting it in. The way I've got that set up is that you have a folder with a name of your script, and then you've got within that a script file and an XML file. Whatever those are named, it doesn't matter. And then with the naming, it will take precedence of whatever you've got set in that XML file, and then whatever you have the folder name named. So if you don't have that set yet, it will go off the folder name. That being said, if you already have a repo of scripts, there's not much that this tool can do to help you there other than pull everything down and start in that new repo.
No, but like the repository that I'm thinking about has like some credential, like key tab files and stuff in it, and I'm like, oh, I could just throw a folder in there called Jamf scripts and then use that to like clone off of instead of having to make a whole new repository.
Sure. I mean, as far as trying to bring them under into this pipeline, it's going to expect that XML to go along with it. I could imagine you could probably work it out so you have a submodule, another project maybe that could do that.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm probably the only other one that uses it. So with your new commits, did you put anything to delete them? Because I know previously we had nothing that would delete old scripts if you removed it from the repos.
Yeah, we don't have that feature yet. We've talked about it. It kind of keeps coming up when we do want to delete something. And at this point, we just haven't written that functionality.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions from anybody?
Does anybody think they'll use this? Sweet.
That's awesome.
Hey, you guys can't raise your hands.
I mean, like Brad mentioned earlier too, we're 200 plus commits into using this, so it's been rock solid in production. So.
Well, perfect. If we have no more questions, then thank you, Brad and Brian, for the work that you guys are doing and for sharing this stuff, and for the rest of the Target team as well.